What if I told you that some of the strangest animals alive today have been surviving on Earth for hundreds of millions of years? Long before humans appeared, before modern continents looked the way they do today, and even before dinosaurs became the dominant creatures on land, these animals were already here. They survived dramatic climate changes, disappearing oceans, volcanic disasters, powerful predators, and mass extinction events that erased countless species from the planet forever. Some were believed to be extinct, only to suddenly reappear alive. Others possess biological abilities that seem almost impossible. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this: they are still here. They are not fossils. They are not creatures from a science fiction movie. They are living survivors. And when you understand what they have survived, you begin to realize just how extraordinary life on Earth really is. One of the most famous examples is the horseshoe crab. Despite its name, it isn't actually a crab. It belongs to a completely different group of animals and is more closely related to spiders and scorpions. Its ancestors were already living in Earth's oceans hundreds of millions of years ago, long before dinosaurs appeared. During that enormous stretch of time, the planet changed again and again. Continents moved, sea levels rose and fell, climates shifted, and countless species disappeared. Yet horseshoe crabs continued to survive. Their body design proved remarkably effective. Their hard shell protects their body, while their long tail helps them move and orient themselves. They can live in coastal environments and tolerate changing conditions better than many other creatures. Their appearance may seem primitive, but that doesn't mean they failed to evolve. Instead, their basic design was successful enough that evolution had little reason to completely redesign it. Sometimes survival doesn't require becoming more complicated. Sometimes the simplest successful design is the one that lasts. Then there is the coelacanth, perhaps one of the most incredible stories in modern biology. For decades, scientists believed this ancient-looking fish had disappeared millions of years ago. Fossils showed that coelacanth relatives had existed hundreds of millions of years in the past. Then, in 1938, a living coelacanth was discovered near the coast of South Africa. Scientists suddenly faced an astonishing reality. An animal they thought existed only in fossils was still alive in the modern ocean. The discovery became one of the greatest zoological surprises of the 20th century. Coelacanths live in deep marine environments, often inside underwater caves and rocky areas where humans rarely explore. Their unusual lobed fins and distinctive body structure make them look like something from another age. But the truth is even more fascinating. The coelacanth isn't literally unchanged since prehistoric times. It has evolved like every other living organism. What makes it remarkable is that its lineage has survived for an incredibly long period while maintaining a body plan that remains highly successful in its environment. Its discovery also taught scientists an important lesson. Absence of evidence is not always evidence of extinction. Sometimes an animal can disappear from human observation while continuing to exist somewhere beyond our reach. Another ancient survivor is the Nautilus. Floating through tropical ocean waters, this strange cephalopod carries a beautiful spiral shell that looks almost like a living piece of ancient art. Nautilus relatives have an evolutionary history stretching back hundreds of millions of years. Their shell isn't simply decorative. It is a sophisticated survival system. Inside the shell are chambers that help control buoyancy, allowing the animal to move through the water without constantly swimming. The Nautilus also possesses numerous tentacles that help it explore its surroundings and capture food. Compared with modern squid and octopuses, the Nautilus appears almost primitive, but its evolutionary history tells a different story. It survived major changes in marine ecosystems, while many other ancient marine animals vanished. However, survival through millions of years does not make a species invincible. Today, some Nautilus populations face pressure from human activities, including overharvesting. This creates an uncomfortable question. If an animal can survive hundreds of millions of years of natural change, could human activity become the threat it cannot overcome? Perhaps no living animal makes the ancient world feel more real than the crocodile. When you look at a crocodile resting silently near a river, you are looking at a lineage with extremely deep evolutionary roots. Crocodilian ancestors lived alongside dinosaurs, and their broader group survived the mass extinction that occurred around 66 million years ago. How did they make it through when so many other animals disappeared? Their biology may provide part of the answer. Crocodiles are incredibly efficient predators. They don't need to constantly chase prey. They can remain almost completely motionless for long periods, conserving energy while waiting for an opportunity. Their metabolism allows them to survive for extended periods without food, which could have been extremely valuable when ecosystems collapsed and food became scarce. They are also perfectly adapted to aquatic environments, where they can hide, ambush prey, and conserve energy. Crocodiles are not dinosaurs, but they are living representatives of an ancient branch of reptiles that has endured through enormous changes in Earth's history. Their survival demonstrates something important about evolution. Sometimes being efficient is more valuable than being powerful. But the next survivor is so tiny that you could easily miss it. Meet the tardigrade, often nicknamed the water bear. These microscopic animals are barely visible without magnification, yet they have developed one of the most remarkable survival strategies known in the animal kingdom. When conditions become extremely unfavorable, certain tardigrades can enter a dormant state called cryptobiosis. Their metabolism can fall dramatically, and their bodies become capable of tolerating environmental stresses that would be fatal to most other animals. They can withstand extreme dehydration and very low temperatures, and researchers have studied their remarkable tolerance to radiation and other harsh conditions. But there is an important misconception. Tardigrades are not immortal and cannot survive absolutely everything. Their incredible reputation comes from their ability to temporarily shut down their normal biological activity and wait for better conditions. In other words, they don't necessarily defeat extreme environments. They survive by becoming almost biologically inactive until the danger passes. For a microscopic creature, that is an extraordinary strategy. Now imagine an animal that can actually reverse part of its own life cycle. It sounds impossible, but the so-called immortal jellyfish, Turritopsis dohrnii, can do something remarkably close. Under certain stressful conditions, this tiny jellyfish can transform its adult cells and return to an earlier developmental stage. Instead of simply continuing toward the end of its life cycle, it can potentially revert to a juvenile state and begin developing again. This ability has made it famous around the world. But the word immortal can be misleading. The jellyfish can still die from predators, disease, injury, or environmental threats. It isn't an indestructible creature. What makes it extraordinary is the ability to reverse its development, something extremely unusual among animals. Scientists are interested in this process because it challenges our understanding of aging, regeneration, and cellular transformation. While humans grow older in one direction, this tiny jellyfish has a biological escape route that allows it to move backward through part of its life cycle. Then there is the Greenland shark, a creature that seems almost perfectly designed for patience. Living in the cold waters of the North Atlantic and Arctic regions, Greenland sharks grow extremely slowly. Scientists have estimated that some individuals can live for several centuries, potentially making them among the longest-lived vertebrates known to science. Think about what that means. A shark alive today may have been born hundreds of years ago, long before many modern technologies existed. While human civilizations changed around it, the shark continued moving slowly through the cold darkness of the ocean. Its metabolism is adapted to an environment where energy is limited and temperatures are extremely low. It doesn't need to race through the water like some other predators. Its strategy is completely different. Conserve energy, move slowly, and wait. The Greenland shark is a perfect example of how survival can depend not on speed or aggression, but on patience and adaptation. So what do all these animals have in common? The answer isn't that they are unchanged, invincible, or somehow immune to extinction. They survived because their characteristics happened to work in the environments they lived in. Some were adaptable. Some lived in places where competition was limited. Some could survive without food for long periods. Some possessed highly efficient bodies. And some simply had biological systems that allowed them to endure conditions that eliminated other species. Evolution doesn't plan for the future. It doesn't decide which animals deserve to survive. Instead, environmental changes create challenges, and organisms with traits that help them survive are more likely to continue reproducing. But there is a darker side to this story. Surviving ancient extinction events does not guarantee survival in the modern world. The same horseshoe crab lineage that survived enormous geological changes can now face human pressure. The Nautilus, despite its ancient history, can be affected by overharvesting and changing marine ecosystems. Many species that appear incredibly resilient can still decline when their environment changes faster than they can adapt. Earth has experienced several mass extinction events, and every time, life found a way forward. New species appeared, ecosystems transformed, and evolution continued. The survivors we see today are the result of that extraordinary history. They are not frozen pieces of the past. They are modern animals, carrying ancient evolutionary stories inside their DNA, and perhaps that's what makes them so fascinating. They remind us that Earth's history is not just a story of disappearance, it is also a story of survival. The horseshoe crab, the coelacanth, the nautilus, the crocodile, the tardigrade, the immortal jellyfish, and the Greenland shark all tell different versions of the same incredible story. Life can be fragile, but it can also be astonishingly persistent. Species can disappear forever, while others survive for millions of years, almost unnoticed. And sometimes, the creatures we think belong to the distant past are still moving through our world today. So the next time you see a crocodile beside a river, a horseshoe crab on a beach, or a strange creature disappearing into the darkness of the ocean, remember what you're actually looking at. You're looking at a survivor, a living reminder of a planet that existed long before us, a reminder that Earth has changed countless times, and life has repeatedly found ways to continue. And perhaps the greatest question isn't how these animals survived the ancient world. The real question is whether they can survive ours.